Hey everyone, today we're going to experiment with freighting, a technique for creating long sentences. But wait, you might say, why would we do that? Well, simply put, for many people, writing long sentences is intimidating. Many people feel uncomfortable writing long sentences because it feels as though they lose control over it. The grammar becomes trickier, and they're not sure where to put the extra words and commas. Writing a long sentence increases your chances of accidentally writing a run-on or introducing a comma splice. However, being able to write long sentences is key to style. Long sentences create flow in your writing, whereas having a bunch of short sentences stacked on top of each other makes your writing sound choppy and awkward. Let's take a look at this example of many short sentences stacked on top of each other. Josh was sick. He was a health nut. He was retching into the toilet. His vomit was brown and green. It also smelled bad. His hair was matted and sweaty. He had not showered for days. He had been sick for a while. Every single one of those sentences is grammatically correct. Functionally, it's absolutely fine. In fact, there's even some great word choices in there. Retching is a great verb, and we can picture the predicament that Josh is in. We've all been sick before. We can relate to his illness. Stylistically, however, it falls short. There's a lot of repetition of pronouns, and because there's so many periods, it has a lot of pauses. Pauses can be great when they're intentional, but here they only impede the flow. Let's take a look at these same ideas rewritten to fit into one long sentence. My health nut cousin Josh was sick, retching foul-smelling brown-green bile into the toilet, his hair sweaty and matted from days of exertion without a shower to cleanse the outside of his body, while the inside of it steadfastly cleansed the contents of his stomach. That makes a really big difference. We dropped a lot of pronouns and verbs in order to make the grammar work, and we added some additional sensory details, but the spirit of the sentence is the same as the original set of short sentences. With this sentence, we have created flow. Now that you've seen the impact of freighting, let's take a closer look at how it works. Freighting, like I said before, is a method for creating long sentences. It's called freighting because it works like a freight train. A sentence is always composed of a subject and a verb. Some sentences also include a direct object, depending on what the verb is. Freighting asks you to visualize your sentence as flatbeds for freight cars, capable of having additional information stacked on top of it. Then, lengthening your sentence is as simple as loading the cars. Let's take a look at a simple subject-verb-direct-object sentence. Ryan kicked the ball. Ryan is our subject. He occupies the first flatbed in our train. We can ask ourselves some questions to figure out what kind of information to stack onto the Ryan flatbed. Who is Ryan? Are there other people also kicking the ball? How old is Ryan? What does Ryan look like? What kind of a person is Ryan? We don't have to answer all of these questions in our sentence, just the ones we think are relevant to the context. Try to pick words that invoke the 5 senses for better sensory impact. Sweat dripping down his tanned and handsome face, young Ryan kicked the ball. Our sentence is lengthening nicely. Now, let's move to the verb and stack some more information into that flatbed. As with the subject, we should ask ourselves some questions to figure out what kind of information should get stacked with our verb. For example, we might ask ourselves, is Ryan doing anything other than kicking? How is he kicking the ball? Is the ball being kicked far? or hard, or softly. Adverbs, words which describe verbs, are easy to stack into your verb flatbed. That brings our sentence to: sweat dripping down his tanned and handsome face, young Ryan expertly kicked and punted the ball. We didn't add quite as much length with the verb as we did for the subject, but that's okay. Not every sentence is going to have a super full flatbed for every freight car. Instead, pack your length into the sections that are most important to your sentence. Now, let's take a look at the last freight car of this train, the direct object, the ball. What does the ball look like? What kind of a ball is it? Where did Ryan get the ball? Those are just some of the questions we can ask ourselves when we're describing this ball. Sweat dripping down his tanned and handsome face, young Ryan expertly kicked and punted the old, worn-down soccer ball which he had received as a birthday gift from his beloved grandfather many years ago. Now that's a mouthful. By looking at every freight car separately and packing in more sensory details, we've successfully lengthened a 4-word sentence into a 35-word giant. There's one more thing I want you to keep in mind before you go running off and writing these super long sentences. Not every sentence has to be long. Sometimes a very short sentence gives just the right amount of punch. However, being comfortable writing long sentences allows you to vary your sentence structures in your papers and writings, and that makes it flow better, and that makes it more appealing to read. So, as one last example, I'm going to leave you with one very long sentence immediately followed by a very short sentence to illustrate my point. Having never learned from my father, the Excel sheet addict, I dove into my task head first, packing everything with abandon, overloading boxes with books, throwing things away like a manic recovered hoarder turned minimalist, donating giant black trash bags full of too small and outdated clothes to the Salvation Army, enlisting the assistance of bemused family and friends to toss it onto a truck and drive it to my new dwelling, meshing all of my pitiful leftover worldly possessions with those of my forever patient husband, losing my stuffed Yoshi, which I surely would never toss in the to donate pile, ending up, somehow, despite dozens of discussions and well-laid plans, with 2 crock pots but no toaster. I must consider lists. Thanks for watching. I hope creating long sentences feels a little less intimidating than 8 minutes ago. Remember, just like anything else, it will take practice to perfect this technique. I encourage you to get frustrated. That's always a learning experience in and of itself. But keep writing.